Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. On the face of all mankind, our numbers up and the dead woman sound. Go along to get along in the time by the siren song. The nights are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The hordes upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. A pile of bodies rotting, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. Strings no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Howdy, howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. We're here on a Wednesday live stream. It is February the 23rd, 2022. I'm going to try to patch Tim in here right quick to the Skype. We kind of got connected a lot late, and I'm a little out of breath because I ran up to the stairs because I forgot my earbuds, so I couldn't hear anything that's going on in the show. So let me figure out how to get Tim on the screen here. That's just another me on the screen. Another me on the screen. So we'll probably have to NDI on Skype real quick. Sorry about this, folks. Wonders of technology. It's pretty wonderful if you know how to use it. It's pretty wonderful if you know how to use it. If you don't know what you're doing with it, it could be a pain. But we're getting it taken care of. Yeah, I thought there for a second I was going to be doing a solo show, which would have been interesting. I was not prepared to do that, but I got prepared real quick and had something lined up for you. So let me make sure I get Tim's video on here. Oh, on the Main cam, okay. Yeah, I was just going to kind of share some of, and I don't think our listeners can hear you, but Tim just said he saw my stack of books there, and I was going to kind of get into some of the things I was researching for the show. Maybe y'all might want to look into some of them too, and just kind of join the conversation and join the discussion with us. And sometimes that's easier if you have a little bit of the source material. So we're going to try to get Tim patched in here real quick, turn off the NDI and turn it back on. Sometimes that works. Skype is really tricky with this. There he is. Got you in there, Tim. Let's make sure.
You have a bit of an echo on your voice.
I do? Well, that's terrible. Let me just see if I can't fix that.
It's the there I am. I better stop looking like a hobo.
Yeah, you're on screen now, and folks can hear you. Do you hear an echo, or are you monitoring there? Do you hear an echo on your end?
On the Skype, it's fine. When I put the headphones on to actually hear the live stream, it was echoing. I can check it now to see if you fixed it.
Okay, yeah, please do. Were you having echo on my voice, or did you have it on the intro song?
No.
Whoops. All right, good deal. Well, you know, these things... Hey, did you ever see that, speaking of Max Headroom, I mean, it's not what the show's about tonight, but did you ever see where that guy hacked into the... I forget which network it was, but he hacked into network television feed. It was in the 1980s, and he put on this crazy video, Max Headroom style video. Nobody still knows who it was or where it came from, but did you ever see that? Well, I mean, there was the Coca-Cola commercial, right? That was Max Headroom. I'm thinking. Okay, well, there was oh, I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Well, real quick, I'll show you this video since it doesn't sound like you've ever heard of it, and probably a lot of people never heard of it. It's kind of one of those things you just come across, you know, crawling through the internet, but it stays on YouTube, and I'll play this video for you right quick, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about it. I don't know if I don't think I'm sharing the screen there. Hang on just a second, Tim. I'm going to switch over to, I'm going to take you off screen for just a minute. Oh, I'm on cam too. Okay, no wonder. All right, so I'll get you back on there. Sorry about that, folks, if you didn't, because you didn't have Tim on that one. So here we go. Got you back on screen. Now, let's see if I can get our display pulled up here. There we are. Here's the Max Headroom incident. Oh, let me make sure the sound's coming through first. And Tim, I'll have to share to your screen, but then I don't know if I'll be able to get me back on your screen.
Just keep it the way it is. I'm only a couple of seconds behind you. I pulled up the other stream. That's where I'll do that so I can monitor it to make sure nothing's happening.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get it figured out eventually, folks. Thanks for bearing with us while we go through these little growing pains while we learn how to use this stuff live, and especially when you add Skype. Even seasoned podcasters and hosts have a heck of a time dealing with Skype from time to time. Seems like it just wants to shit the bed a lot for whatever reason, but let's get this where we can start it. Make sure the folks can hear it.
I saw the top of it with the Max Headroom incident. I saw it as one of Wayne's videos. I'm not familiar with that video, but I've seen a couple of his.
Little Wayne's video?
No, there's a YouTuber by the name of Wang,
Oh,
W-H-A-N-G, and he covers some, I guess, what you call more absurd and out there topics.
Okay.
And I saw at the very when you were pulling up those Max Headroom videos that he had covered something you were going to talk about.
Oh, okay. A little confused there. I was wondering what Little Wayne had to do with it. All right, well, here comes the video, folks, the Max Headroom incident. Again, we didn't plan on talking about this, but just since he brought it up, I got to share it with you.
should walk often with the old ones of your tribe. That is the only way to learn.
I'll get you a hot drink, miss.
I've seen some dry clothing.
Now, I remember this now. I guess I don't remember seeing it happen live, obviously,
Right.
but I remember being a part of internet lore now. But I don't know the backstory behind it.
Nobody does. That's the interesting thing about it. They never
Okay.
figured out
Well,
what happened.
So some guy pirates BBC's TV station and does this.
Yeah. Can you imagine seeing that live? I mean, what the hell would you think?
It was very dark.
Well, I do come from a time in history where if you stomped through the house too hard where the TV channels were scrambled, you would magically walk into porn. So, yeah, this is a little bit more.
Well, there's a link to a Reddit post there at the end of this video. I'll share this video in the description here if anybody's interested. This is the Max Headroom Incident, and in the description there's a link, or at the end of the video anyway, that shows you a person who has claimed that they know who did it, and that they have some interesting stuff to back up their claim. So I'll post that video. I'll post that in the description right quick if I can.
Do you know about I'm gonna get this name wrong. There was a couple of other people that I've heard. I guess you would call them social anarchist on that level, or social terrorist, I guess. There was another one who would Doctor Dread or something like that. Am I getting that? Maybe I just read that in that description. There was another guy who lived out in California, and he would do nutty stuff like he went to the top of a power station one time and just decided to flip all the breakers off for no reason. I'll have to look up the name a little bit more, but go ahead and talk about that. As soon as you said that, I'm wondering if those are connected now because they're both so random.
It is. It sounds. I wonder if there was a team back then. You know, you had Anonymous that was kind of making waves and getting in the news. And the 2010. Go ahead.
Do you think Anonymous got hijacked?
I
Like, 'cause I remember when we started hearing about Anonymous, they were doing, I guess, like things that would benefit people from almost like a digital Batman sort of thing. But as they went on, like, I don't believe all the it's almost like they got politically absurd, and I think that they got watered down with a lot of imitators or something.
Well, yeah, and the nature of Anonymous in and of itself, that nobody knows outside of the group, especially who anyone is within it. But I mentioned a podcast called Quite Frankly Podcast. I think it was on the last episode that I mentioned that. And it just so happened that, quite frankly, right after that, he did an episode with Jim Lee of climateviewer.org, who he's been a hacker his whole life, and Jim was in on a lot of this Anonymous stuff, and he tells the story of what actually happened with Anonymous, and it's pretty interesting, but it's a long conversation, and you really have to understand a lot of the background of it to begin with, and I don't think we really have time to get into that tonight, but I will, after we get done here, I'll go find that and link it in the description, because it's a very interesting interview, and there was a lot of co-opting of it from the feds. There was a lot of infiltration. There were a lot of informants that were probably informants the whole time. So it's a big long story. If you're interested in Anonymous, I'll post it in the description after the video. If you're joining us live, that means you probably got your notification bell on. And I hope we didn't make you regret that with all the technical nonsense tonight. But if you're not joining us live, it's time to hit that notification bell. Because you're watching us, you might as well watch us live so that you can get in on the discussion with us. Because we're going to be getting into some current events tonight. And when I was planning on doing it as a solo show, especially, it would have been nice to have some audience participation. So I'd really like for you to do that. Jump in the live chat if nothing else. If you don't want to be on camera, or if you don't want to be on, on the microphone, that's fine too. Just jump in the live chat. We just want to get you in on it. We got a lot to get into tonight, but I'm primarily going to focus on two things, and that's the trucker convoy and going to the United States, and going to be looking at Russia and Ukraine and a couple other things here. So we had some interesting developments in both of those stories since we last talked about them. It was last Wednesday that we got into that. And I've also got a couple of local things that we want to get into. Some interesting stories in the Johnson City Press the past couple of weeks. Now, we live in Carter County, Tennessee. If you've not heard of us, we're in the Tri-Cities in the Mountain Empire. This is right in the northeast corner of Tennessee. We're right on the border of North Carolina and really close to the border of Virginia. So we're right there in the corner of Carter County. But with everything in the news about restructuring the police and all this kind of thing over the last few years, and we've really seen no-knock warrants be in the news lately. Most famously, I think probably the Breonna Taylor case, where the police conducted a raid in the night after her boyfriend, who, if I'm not mistaken, he fired back at the officers who did not announce themselves, and he was acquitted of assaulting them because they did not announce themselves, and he assumed that someone kicking in his door was there to do him harm. It turned out he was right, but that was a big case about the time that the George Floyd story was going on. And recently we had a young man, Amir Locke, who was shot by police in his bed, and he was holding his gun, as he also feared a home invasion, in which he was right to fear, it seems. But in the Johnson City Press last week, we had a story about no-knock warrants. Did you happen to see that?
Did not.
Well, in this story, this sergeant, let me find his name here. Let me pull it up right quick. Sergeant Jeff Legault of the Johnson City Police Department, Criminal Investigation Division, he believes that no-knock search warrants, a court order that allows law enforcement to enter a home without first announcing their presence, are extremely dangerous. I think he's right about that, except for in extreme circumstances. I don't see why there would be any need to do this. You could always, for example, you go back to the Waco incident in the 1990s, where David Koresh, they went in, and it wasn't exactly a no-knock warrant. They were staking out the compound for weeks, but they eventually went straight in and, killed a whole lot of people. When that somebody tipped off the Branch Davidians. Mm-hmm.
Somebody's
shit,
coming.
dude. I had you off camera. Fuck, I'm sorry. Oh, God. Sorry to our viewers, man. Nobody been able to hear anything Tim was saying. I was just sitting here saying yes. I still see you on the screen down here, so I just assume that everybody else can too. But I'm sorry, folks. Tim was talking about that he heard that the Branch Davidians were tipped off by locals. Go ahead and make that point, Tim.
Yeah, it wasn't even because of they were tipping them off to tell them people were coming. It's just in a small town. If you've suddenly got heavy police presence and ATF wandering around, everybody's going to start telling people, "Hey, have you seen the new folks?" And I guess that's, of course, I've seen so many Waco documentaries. I guess I fell down a Waco rabbit hole probably about 10 years ago and just watched a bunch of different documentaries on it. It doesn't bother me that a group of people are hoarding guns. But like, do you not think that like I don't know how to interpret that one correctly because I feel like both sides acted royally stupid.
Well, I'm sure I'm not familiar enough with how the Branch Davidians acted in that case to say. I I I, I only was the bringing it up to mention that it was said that David Koresh would go jogging every day, and he could have been easily apprehended while he was out on one of these jogs. But
Yeah,
but
yeah,
rather but
definitely.
rather than doing that, they decided to, go in guns blazing. And I saw video that appeared to show a tank shooting a flamethrower into the building. Now, was this you saying you've watched
There
a
were
lot of
at
it?
least there were two tanks there, so there was at least two tanks present. There was a helicopter. It was an insanely large amount of police presence, even considering how many guns the people had in
But
there.
these
Which
people
is
weren't threatening anybody, were they?
no, what they were doing was, it's a compound. I'm not. I mean, you can call it a cult, you can call it whatever you want to, but if you can imagine that a part of your, I guess, group of people that are in your network now are making money. Like it's a farming community, they make money and get through all different means. But one of the ways they made money was a couple of guys started doing like these kind of like the Appalachian Fair gun
Mm-hmm.
trades that they would do. They would trade weapons, go somewhere else, and then they get more money out of them and just try to make money doing this. But apparently, they had gotten so many weapons at this point that the ATF had gotten tipped off about it just because they had amassed so many.
So it was
That's apparently
basically just that they were collecting weapons. So
they were collecting weapons, but they were actively selling them. They were actively trading them. But I really felt like the whole situation could have been fixed if they would just sent somebody from the Fed down there to go, hey, you guys aren't hoarding them because you plan on taking over the local town
mm-hmm.
or anything. Oh, you're not? Oh, okay. Still looks kind of sketch to me, but there's nothing illegal about this. We'll peace out now. It could have totally been worked out that
Right.
way.
And
You're right. They brought in a news crew. They could have got him at any point in time jogging, but they wanted to make a scene out of that for some
Well,
reason.
and that was the same around the same time we had the whole Ilian Gonzalez incidents, which they seem to want to make a scene around too. But back to the reason I brought that up is because the no-knock warrants. I think unless it's extenuating circumstances where someone's life is immediately in danger, I feel like we should go back to what used to be done when police departments were really there weren't even police departments, there were sheriffs. And you would send word to someone first of all that you know we have a warrant for your arrest, we'd like you to come and turn yourself in. And you don't wait. Everybody has to leave the house eventually, so you want to catch them then and not go kicking indoors where first of all they have the advantage on you if you were the police officer as far as much as they can have with the superior manpower that the police have. But and also that allows you to go out and surround them and apprehend them more likely, a lot more safely than if you go kicking indoors, especially. So there seem.
Oh, actually,
Go ahead.
was the one you said that was it the Brianna?
Breonna Taylor.
Yeah, that's a bit different though, I guess, than like like that's an apartment
Mm-hmm.
complex, correct? Or even if it was just like a private dwelling, like a house, like the Koresh one was literally a
It's a
fenced-in
huge
compound.
compound, yeah.
So it wasn't even just a matter of the not similar, but kind of similar because they're both handled incorrectly. You probably shouldn't be kicking in apartment doors and not expecting somebody to have a gun behind there. And you probably shouldn't roll onto some people's houses that build a big fuck off fence with a tank. I mean, those are crazy people. Obviously, what'd you expect them to do? Come out rationally? They're going to burn the whole place down and take the kids
Well,
with them
when
because
when
that's what
when
they.
you pull up in a tank or you surround the place with a SWAT team with with not AR-15s but M4 carbines and grenades and all kinds of crazy stuff, and you start doing that, I mean, you're pushing, you're really pushing that into you're escalating the situation unnecessarily in a lot of cases. For example, like the
It wasn't even like a Ruby Ridge or anything.
no,
This was a group of people who had over 20 or 30 kids in there with them, and you know who they are. They've got all these very crazy beliefs, and there was a very long standoff where they were just like
right.
send out the kid. And I really think after because some of his demands were he wanted like a 30 minutes of radio time on like a major network so he could preach the word of the God or something. But it was very obvious after he had done several different stalling tactics that he had no plan of coming out. Uh, How in the world FBI agents that have higher level psychology training than me, I only have a degree, and I could look at a group of people like that and go, yeah, they're so crazy, they'll probably burn those kids to the ground. They're not coming
Yeah,
out alive.
you're confirming their, what you're saying are paranoid delusions, and then you're confirming to them that they are right by pulling up in tanks and helicopters.
Exactly. So what did you expect them to do? So that's why I keep saying that both sides of it handled it so stupidly poor. Because no, I don't think the ATF needs to be rolling up to your private dwelling with helicopters and everything like that. But they should know better than to roll up into a compound with children and not think that this a literal end times cult where the guy thinks he is the reincarnated Jesus. You think they're not all willing to die for this man?
Yeah.
It's just it seems so deliberate. I have to either think it's deliberate or Janet Reno and that group of clowns are literally incompetent clowns. It's either one or the other.
Man, I mean, it's hard to think that they're that incompetent, honestly.
Isn't it? I mean, have you worked for enough places like corporations and stuff where you look around and you're like, the guy thinks I wonder if the Fed's the same way where they just keep hiring their drinking buddies and then everybody's collectively fucking up, but they can't turn anybody in because it's one giant trail of screw up all the way to the top. What if it really was that way?
I mean,
what if we're totally full of crap? There is no conspiracies. It's just one giant Rube Goldberg machine of people screwing.
Well, some of the places that I've worked, I could totally see that being the case. But I don't know. It seems like they tend to, I mean, to accidentally be evil that much. That's kind of a stretch.
Oh yeah, I get you.
But this story in the Johnson City Press, Sergeant Jeff Legault of the Johnson City Police Department, he says there's no reason except in extreme exigent circumstances that a no-knock search warrant be allowed, period, he told attendees during a community roundtable at Langston Center on Wednesday morning. Now, it's nice to see this framed because with the Amir Locke story, just for example, I've got this one on NPR, and it's hard to even look at this story. I'm bringing it up for the folks to see here. This is on NPR, and this is from the Reverend Al Sharpton saying that Amir Locke would still be alive if not for no-knock warrants. And it's hard to find these stories not framed with this racial bullshit on top of it. I mean, and that's what this story goes to all about is, the whole story is over and over again. This is, another dead black man, another, if he was guilty of only being a black man, and it was all, that's what the whole story revolves around, rather than the fact that this young man, who cares what color he is, had the police kick in his door and murder him in his bed. Why? But anyway, that story is out there. Amir Locke, if you're not familiar with it and you want to check it out, like I said, most people probably have heard about the Breonna Taylor, and this Johnson City Press article mentions it. I'll link it in the description as well. But it says the procedure has received renewed scrutiny after police in Louisville, Kentucky shot Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old black woman. It says a 26-year-old woman. They shot her multiple times while serving a no-knock warrant in her apartment in 2020. More recently, a Minneapolis police officer shot Amir Locke, a 22-year-old black man, while serving a no-knock warrant in his apartment while he was sleeping on February 2nd. Both Locke and Taylor died as a result of injuries. No, they didn't die as a result of their injuries. They were shot and killed. They weren't injured and then died. As of July 1st, Tennessee law prohibits state judges from issuing no-knock search warrants to officers, but they are still allowed in federal cases. So before that law went into effect, Legault said that the last time he remembered a judge authorizing a no-knock was in 2016. And in this case, there were... they said there was a meth investigation. They were had reason to suspect that police officers knocked on the house, knocked on the door, that they would have a shootout because the guy who they were going after had shot at cops at a traffic stop before. So they did authorize a no-knock search warrant. Then they deployed tear gas and a SWAT team into the building, and no one was hurt. Multiple people ultimately went to jail, and that's what you would want to see in that situation, but that's often not what happens. And it may be also another one of those things where you only hear about the ones where people die, but I'm still against the just the whole idea anyway.
Of the no-knock warrant.
I mean, like I said, except for really extreme circumstances, like who knows.
I wonder how.
hostage
Like,
situation, or I don't know.
yeah, because I'm not. Well, I'm not even up on the police and law. I'm not up on that stuff probably as much as you. Definitely not as much as someone involved in law enforcement. And like, I guess my question is like, how easy is that law to exploit a no-knock warrant? Like you say, extreme circumstances, and I would agree that if you found out, I don't know, insert horrible
Yeah,
situation. I mean, they know about Breonna Taylor that they felt like they needed to go in with no knocking.
yeah. I'm not sure what it was that they.
Anybody look that up? I mean, like anybody look in there and see
I
what
think
they
there.
were. Why
I
they were
think there was
knocking
something
in.
to do with. I know. I heard so many things about this story that apparently there was. Was it there was body parts or blood in her trunk or something like that, or her boyfriend was suspected in a murder or something. I don't know, but it's been a while since that story was out, to be honest, and it's escapes my memory currently.
When it's like, I guess using a case that doesn't involve people having body parts in their trunks, if that's
Well,
real.
at any event, though, if there was no one in danger, in immediate danger, even if they did, even if this guy had murdered someone.
Like I get like if you find out that this guy is, for example, in the To Catch a Predator community, I will say TCAT from here on out because I just can't keep saying that
Yeah.
over and over again. In the TCAP community, in the well, I guess later seasons with Chris Hansen, maybe middle, there was a high-ranking judge that they had busted wanting pictures and stuff, and he never actually came to the catch house. So they brought the police force to his
Mm.
house, and he shot himself when they broke in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people gave the show criticism. A lot of people gave the show criticism for going and causing this to happen.
I'm not one of those
He
people.
had I'm not one of those people in that case. You're a high-ranking judge with CP on your computer. I guess what I'm saying is, there's certain cases I do think they need to just go in and get a crazy person, and I think it should be a pretty clear line. I'm just wondering.
Well, did they do a no-knock warrant on him, or what?
They showed up, knocked on the door, and said, "Police, you can go." I can't remember which season it is. They knock. He comes to the door and says, something another, and they find out that he's not going to open the door. They kick the thing in. You can hear over the police lapel mics when he says, "Don't come any closer." And they say, "Come out." And he says, "I'm not going to hurt anybody." And then you hear himself. He just shoots himself.
Hmm.
Like he just says, "I'm not going to hurt anybody," and then he shoots himself. I don't really like. That's not the same thing though. Like a no-knock warrant. For example, we were talking earlier. You said there was a no-knock warrant where they went and busted a person who had meth.
Mm-hmm.
Is meth really even worth putting the officer's life at
Yeah,
risk?
really. I mean, again, I understand that he shot at people, and they wanted
issue.
they wanted to catch him off guard, I guess. But when do you catch a meth head off guard? They never sleep.
Well, they probably like imagine that you're like a cave troll or something. Just here come to selling some sobriety dust. They might try to make a deal with you. Meth, is that dangerous enough to kick a door in? That's what I like
Well,
with
I
these
mean, I
no-knock
could
warrants.
see if you were like cooking some meth and had kids in the house and wouldn't let them come out or something. Yeah, but I mean,
Like you got like a whole apartment block complex for kids. You know they're cooking it and they're going to burn the whole place down.
again, why not
Like,
wait
that
around
doesn't
the
make
corner and wait till he goes out to his vehicle and get him then? I mean, have some guys sneak up and wait till he goes outside. I feel like that's a better idea than in that particular situation. They said that was the exigent circumstance that led them to issue the no-knock warrant. Now, that to me doesn't seem like an extreme circumstance, does it to you?
what having
I
meth.
mean, I don't even know what it was. It just says it's a meth-related, a methamphetamine investigation. So was this guy a dealer? Was
I think even if he had pounds of meth in there and he was just sitting on it, you can totally either wait for them to come out or find another way other than kicking a door in, risking the officer and the other people in their
I agree,
lives.
dude.
And I guess that's what I'm saying. It. My issue with law is the same as with like company policy. It lacks nuance because it attempts to make it attempts to create like a structure that is impossible for you to get wrong. Like if we always do this exactly the same way,
Mhm.
nothing bad will ever happen if we just follow this process. And sometimes it goes awry with law and policy that sometimes you got to do things just a little bit different And you would think it would be common sense that maybe you shouldn't kick the meth head's door down and risk getting shot in the chest because he's just sitting there waiting for the doorknob to attack him for 4 days because he's been watching it. Just look at him, and all of a sudden here comes the officer. Braggs comes to the door and he shoots him
Yeah.
instead. That sounds like a really clownish example, but that's really how that crap goes down. You don't kick down meth head's door, don't get shot. Maybe just wait for the idiot to come
I
out.
mean, you never know with these guys. Who's to say that he doesn't have his house rigged, for waiting on somebody to come in and have booby traps and stuff. I mean, we're talking.
Is there something that you can't bust somebody? Like, I know you can't arrest somebody and say, "Hey, we're gonna go look in your house now because we suspect you have lots of meth." Like, maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, they really don't get into the details of that story there. It's really just Sergeant Legault giving an anecdote. So it's kind of one of those things where you read the story and at first it sounds, like a pretty good thing, but then there's the devil's in the details, as they say, where Officer Legault, gets into this story about how they did this to apprehend somebody for meth. Now, and again, there may be more to the story that he left out. He may have done it, tried to keep it concise because he's speaking to the paper, or the paper may have, cut his remarks up into pieces to where, they could get it into the story easy. That happens. But when from the information that's available here, it does appear that this, to most people, probably wouldn't be an extreme exigent circumstance, even if he had shot at police officers before. So that's the kind of worrying element in it, is because it's like they say, well, we're totally against this, but except when there's this case, it's like the Emergency Powers Act. It's kind of what it's like. We have these situations where there are emergencies where we remove the rules and protections in some cases because some things have to be done quickly. I mean, for example, you're not going to charge a paramedic with kicking your door in if he comes in to save your life. You're not going to charge him for a crime for that because it's an emergency. But we see governments on pretty much every level tend to use emergencies to expand their power, and then they rarely relinquish it, which we'll get into that a little bit about Canada today. They did revoke the Emergencies Act, and
I heard because he didn't have enough support.
yeah, that's
Like,
they passed it in the Parliament though.
And people really, well, like I'm saying, like he thought that it wouldn't go as poorly. Like everybody said, and I briefly looked at that. Man, but I guess before we move to Canada, do you think, I really feel like one of the issues with law enforcement, because I've had very, very few negative run-ins with law enforcement. The ones that I've had have been like eye-opening moments of like, oh, this is very very much on an individual basis, because I can see how this kind of authority could really be something bad for some people to seek out. But like, do you think a lot of the backfire against police is because of the way they're funded? Like, for example, we're in East Tennessee, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and this part of Tennessee has basically never not been in a recession, and yet at any point in the week, you can go around Carter County and find cops clocking people trying to give them speeding tickets, and it's because it's the only way you can fund them. But then people get mad because they don't. It's very, very seldom do you have to call them to come and keep somebody from kicking your door in, or a robbery, or you're getting robbed. And so most people's interactions with the cops is, yeah, that son of a bitch gave me a ticket 3 years ago. And so, like, do you think if there was a better way to fund the police other than citations that really don't amount to anything? Because that's what a lot of these safety citations are. It's just a way to fund the military so they can do the job they're supposed to do. And then it turns public opinion against them.
Well, I've often heard that the cops are just revenue generators for the state. I think they do a lot more for the state than that, but I don't really know how much of their budget comes from that. Do you? I mean,
I guess I'm basing it on Carter County because I don't have any experience beyond that. I know we have so many state troopers here in Tennessee, and I'm going to butcher this. There's something about when your area is a certain size, but your funding is only at a certain level, then the state will make up the level with a volume of state troopers. If I'm not mistaken, somebody in cop can correct me on that, definitely, if I'm wrong. But that would explain why we have an obscene amount of state troopers around here. There's one for every city cop I see.
Well, I've heard it say repeatedly in, I've heard I guess the public relations of the state police here, or the highway patrol, I guess they are, rather than the state police. But the state troopers have always said that they don't have a quota. But I've heard from more than one cop, sheriff's office, sheriff deputy, constable that they do, in fact. And I actually have a theory, because I saw a list of the most ticketed cars that the cops wrote tickets for, and it's probably, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. But at this time, the number one ticket that was written, or the number one car that got the most speeding tickets, was the Toyota Camry Solara convertible. Now, what sense does that make? That's the most likely car that you're going to be... I think they have a game where they try to pull over certain cars, and some cars get more points than the others. And that the Toyota Solara, which is not that common of a car, how often do you even see those? Even 10 years ago, when they were still making them, they were way less common than the Toyota Camry. You'd think something like the Toyota Camry or the Honda Accord or something like that would be your most ticketed car. But I thought that was kind of crazy. And the Scion TC was the number 2, which I can kind of see that, because they marketed those to, teenagers and early 20ers who were fans of the Fast and the Furious movies and things like that. So I can kind of see that one, but I just thought that was...
Did you think the convertible one is because it's like younger girls that want to drive like that because it's convertible?
Yeah, maybe they think they got a fast car because it's a convertible. I don't know.
You don't ever see like anybody with like a Lamborghini peeling out of it.
I usually see middle-aged folks drive those Toyota Solaras more. I don't typically see a lot of you
that drive like bats out of hell, so that might make sense there too.
Well, but anyway, that's a story that I thought was interesting that I wanted to bring up that had been in the press. And dang, I forgot the other local story that I was going to bring up. Oh yeah, did you see the 3 women that escaped off a work detail?
No.
I guess they didn't learn anything from the 3 gentlemen that escaped, and 2 of them died a couple of weeks ago. Well, let me pull this up real quick. Do what?
Where'd the 2 dive?
Yeah, the three guys who broke out of the jail through the HVAC deck. We didn't get into it on the show. It was all the local news was talking about for a while, so I didn't figure we had too much to add to it. But here we see in WJHL, the Johnson City Police Department is searching for 3 inmates who worked away from a work detail. According to Johnson City Police Department, at 5:35 p.m., they were notified that inmates walked off while doing work at Freedom Hall Civic Center, which I think Casting Crowns is coming up there. We missed REO Speedwagon, Tim. My buddy was trying to get me to go to like this Maryland Death Fest. I'm like, dude, I'm getting too old for that shit, but if you want to go see Speedwagon, let's do it.
Dude, like, I went to, what was it? The very last heavy show that I went to, I think, was in Knoxville, and it was Kill Switch and a couple other people. And no, I mean, like, I go to those concerts, and I treat like metal and all concerts about like I would treat a Christian contemporary show. I would just stand there and audibly enjoy it, but
Yeah.
I have no desire to run
Mosh and all that stuff.
Got feeling like hell the next
Yeah,
day.
no, I'm too old for that. I do still like the show. It's been a while since I've been to a good metal show. B took me for my birthday in like 2017 to I don't know what the fuck was it called? SummerSlam or something like that. But we got to see Black Dahlia Murder live. They performed the whole Nocturnal album. We got to see Dying Fetus and Oceano, which were, those are 3 bands that I really enjoy. The Faceless was there. It was a good show. Had a really good time. Origin was there, and I'll tell you what, man, this was the coolest thing. They had this. Okay, right. This was right after the summer after Donald Trump had been inaugurated. Political tensions were quite high at this time. There was like kind of a pretty big divide between left and right over the whole thing. Well, we go into this show, and it's in what's that place called? The old oh shit, I can't think of it. The name. It's in Knoxville. It's like crap, I can't think of the name of it.
Is it the one under the underpass?
Yeah.
It was called, I think it's called the International.
Yeah, that's what it was, the International. Yeah, so it was down there, and Origin came on, and if you're not familiar with Origin, they're like super, super technical death metal. But before he starts, they played a couple songs, and the guy comes out, and he's like, all right, I want everybody to divide up. He's like, oh, if you find yourself more on the left side of the political spectrum, get your ass over here. And if you're a right winger, then you get over here. And like, to my surprise, I honestly figured it would be, more left leaning people at this thing, but it was like divided perfectly. And he said, now when I give you the cue or whatever, I want you guys to just take off and smash into each other. Let's get some of this tension out. And man, when he did that, they erupted. And the cool thing was, though, nobody got into any real fights. Everybody really just kind of just got in there and moshed and had a good time. And they were still helping these people up and all that good stuff. It was cool. I stood out of the way and watched. I'm not trying to do all that, but
I got a mistake. I didn't know what was going on. It's called the Wall of Death, and that's what they called it. Back when I was involved in getting my ass kicked.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to say it was either Every Time I Die or Aiden. I don't remember. I saw them both that year at Warped Tour, and that was the first time I'd ever had that happen. But I didn't know what he meant when he did this.
yeah.
And the crowd just split, and I was just sitting there looking straight up. And I was like, "Oh shit, this is what we're doing." So I did. I ran over to one side and got swept up in it, but it wasn't as bad as I thought, because it's not like people are running in Braveheart style punch.
Oh, yeah.
And once they get in there,
No, I've done my share of moshing in the days. I did get up real close to the show, or to the stage for Dying Fetus. I was right on the rail there, so you couldn't help getting knocked around there. But and then like somebody bumps into you, and even if you're not moshing, you got to turn around and shove them back into the crowd, like all that good stuff. But
it's actually better, in my opinion, when you have the heavier bands, when you have the mosh pits, because it's expected, and so everybody just kind of absorbs it. The most violent pit I'd ever been a part of was the year that Taking Back Sunday released. I think it was Louder Now, and it was when they were at their peak before Fred quit. And that's when they had attracted a lot of mainstream attention too. So right before they played, a horde of just very young girls had a mass to see. I think it was like a Yellow Card and the Used, and they'd all just massed right in front of Taking Back Sunday and taking its spot, not realizing all their old school emo dude fans were just coming right up behind them, and we're just marching straight through them. And there was at one point, me and Ashley and a couple of people we were with, our legs weren't even touching the ground, because we were getting pushed chest first into girls that didn't have the mass to push back.
Right.
And so they were just kind of out of the way, and big nipple dudes were pushing us from behind. So we ended up being in the fourth row with people rolling over us. It wasn't even heavy. It was just people, just bad place time, people pouring over the front because they just couldn't take it anymore.
Well, we see people get trampled some of these things, and this is kind of scary when you see that happen. You see little people who.
I haven't seen it, man. I've been going to like heavy shows my whole life.
No, I'm not talking about heavy shows. I'm just talking about.
You never see it. It's when it happens at these bigger festivals with genres, like was it Kendrick Lamar? One of them had that
Travis
happen.
Scott just had it happen recently.
And I was like, they're not equipped for that sort of like a stampede and a trampling, because when you go to like a folk festival, you're not looking at your feet to make sure there's no people under you. But I totally would do that if I went to see like a Atreyu or Thrice or insert band here. Because you don't want to step on somebody because you don't want it done to you.
Well, I didn't mean to actually show these chicks' face on here, but I was just going to say the JCPD is searching for the inmates who walked away from the work detail, because I was just saying, man, didn't you learn nothing from the two guys there who? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find. No, that's not what I want. I'm trying to find. Here we go. This was the story I wanted to look at. Oh, and of course they're spamming me to classmates.com.
Of course. Gotta have.
All right. So this story, deadly chase details show what happens when a police pursuit goes bad. How far should the police pursue somebody? And this is in our local story. Also, this is from WJHL here in Johnson City. This story is one of three detailing the complexity and the cost of police pursuits. It was prompted by the December 4th, 2021 22-mile pursuit by Tusculum police ending with a crash in Johnson City that killed a driver in an uninvolved car. So yeah, these guys, they had somebody down in Tusculum, and the Tusculum Police Department, all the way down, towards Greenville. They saw this guy going by at 104 miles an hour. Now, when they saw this, they take off and they chase him 22 miles all the way up 11E into Johnson City, where he smashed into somebody on Market Street there and killed him. We'll find the name of the person here. Let's see. He sped by him and killed. Gosh, it's not saying their name. 22-year-old. All it says is A. Pearson. A person named last name Pearson. I wanted to actually say their name there because, this, in my opinion, it would not have happened had the police acted differently. And there was really, even if the guy going 104 miles an hour, if you start chasing him, do you think he's going to slow down? I mean, obviously you pull out and blue light him, but if he doesn't stop, why do you pursue him? Why do you not call ahead? And that was another part of the story. They didn't call the cops up in Johnson City or Jonesboro and let them know. They did let Washington County know at some time, but I couldn't hear you, Tim.
Seems like you could avoid a lot of, once again, me speaking with authority on something I don't really fully understand. But that seems another thing where why would you go into a high-speed chase where you could literally call Johnson City and say, hey, do you mind catching this guy? He's coming right at you.
Yeah. And apparently they did let Washington County know, but it was like 8 minutes before they got into Johnson City. So it really wasn't a lot of time. They I guess, 8 minutes, I guess, going 100 miles an hour, you're probably looking at.
You know how you fix it?
What's that? How's that?
There's my furnace. I'm sorry. It's going to scream if you need to mute me.
I can't hear it.
Actually, I can move.
I can't hear it at all.
You can hear it? Oh, okay, good. It's pretty loud back here. You think right before I got a big Alec Baldwin head right there. Remember when right before the Biden's election, Andrew Yang was running against him in the primary, and one of his big standing points was the truckers are going to be out of a job pretty soon because Elon Musk is going to make electric trucks that are auto driving with AI, and these things are going to drive themselves, and these trucks you're going to be out of a job. And then it came out a little bit later on that they weren't as close to making these self-driving trucks as they'd even let on. And do you think are you connecting this a little bit to the modern day situation that not only do you think from the Democrat perspective they wanted people to think that these idiots were more expendable than they were?
I don't know.
Because it's not. There's more people know about that clip of Andrew Yang saying that truckers are all going to lose their job than they actually have of Elon Musk saying, well, we're not even really that close to that really happening yet. It's still a couple of decades away. Because even Elon was saying AI and self-driving everything is probably a little bit further off than some people are projecting. And Yang was saying it was like going to happen like 5 years from now, and all these truckers are going to be out of a job. And now here's not even 3 years into a Biden presidency, and we've got truckers parked in Canada and heading towards Washington. I'm just wondering if those aren't connected. I'm connecting them right now because they're being brought up. Well,
real quick before we get into that, and that is an interesting. So hold that thought for just a second because I want to do one more thing on Tennessee before we get into that. But I'm glad that the press is that the local media is having this conversation is basically what I want to get into. Even if I don't like exactly some of the responses from the cops, I'm glad that they're having this conversation. So this is from the Gateway Pundit. The Tennessee National Guard changes memo request for religious exemptions to require consent for involuntary vaccinating. And that's kind of a little bit of a that headline's a little not that great because it doesn't really. What does that even mean? I couldn't tell. But you get down into the article a little bit, and if you are in the Tennessee National Guard and if you've submitted a request for religious exemption from the COVID vaccine, they got a new little thing here that they had to add. The memorandum they were supposed to write in, they were supposed to submit with their exemption a memorandum in their own words describing why the vaccine conflicts with sincerely held religious belief, which I believe is that seems like that should be illegal. In most cases, it is. You don't actually have to explain. Once you say it's against your religious belief, then in most cases they don't ask you any more questions about that. But they have to now add this to their memorandum. I understand immunizations required by AR 40-562 or other legal directives may be given involuntarily, in parentheses, except with an approved religious accommodation for an exemption. I also, in parentheses, I also understand that when the Adjutant General or a delegated representative determines that conditions of imminent threat exist, I may be involuntarily immunized per AR 600-20, paragraph 5-4. Now, what is an imminent threat? Who determines that it is an imminent threat? Is COVID an imminent threat for a 25-year-old service member who's probably arguably in better shape than anybody, any of us, especially the damn person that wrote this, this legal directive that they have to get it? I guarantee that this 25-year-old service member is in better shape than them, and at far less risk from COVID, which is what is it now? Is it a 99.89% survival rate overall now that they have it? I think that's what the latest numbers are on it. I mean, not that it didn't knock me for a loop there when I had it a little bit, but it ultimately it's not extremely deadly, and especially for someone in peak physical condition such as an American GI.
You don't think those guys and gals are in a little bit rougher position because they are service people?
Oh, absolutely they are. As far as, do you mean their position legally speaking with this?
Well, their position, period. Like, I've been pretty model citizen as far as respecting what I read the room. I have been doing it from the beginning. If you go someplace that seems like a mask should be appropriate, whether you believe it or not, like if I go to a doctor's office, put the dang mask on. I mean, I just do because that's the atmosphere you're in. But modern day times, like you've noticed some of the other places like banks, they're not doing it as much anymore. And so I'm like, if someone else is being squirrely about masks, I'm not going to try to make them feel uncomfortable to prove my point. I'll put the mask on. But like, I don't, it's almost like I see attitude coming from a lot of people. I feel like there should be understanding. Like I know you're a poor nurse, for example, but poor nurse has to wear the mask. And I know it sucks that you're in the military as far as certain things, but I didn't have to take an anthrax shot and they did too. And I'm not saying they
Yeah,
should
they're definitely in worse shape as far as that goes. Yeah, because
it's a different position, and is what I mean with
well,
military.
they put those guys and girls in a position where they either had to, okay, let's say you're an atheist who really doesn't want to get the shot, then what's your out if it's just you really don't want it, or if it goes against your personal convictions, that's not strong enough, according to the way they've described it here. So yeah, they're definitely in a worse position because at that point it's either get the shot or have a less than honorable discharge. And Biden was even talking about putting people in jail who didn't take it. I think people told him that he couldn't legally do that, that he couldn't court martial and put him in the stockade for not getting it. I think he was looking at saying it was not following orders, but apparently the charges for that don't necessarily rise to that level, but they would be dishonorably discharged or less than honorably discharged. But that's the position a lot of those guys found themselves in. So you either do you lie about your religious convictions and say that you're religious if you're not, or do you just take the shot, or do you get kicked out of the military? That's really not a good position to be in. So I don't envy them at all who are in that position.
I know this is maybe this sounds, I'm not sure how this sounds. I think it just sounds exactly how it sounds. But wouldn't you expect most service people just to take the shots? Because by definition, their job is order following.
Well, most will, but the thing is, they're not supposed to. Since the anthrax thing, especially, they're not supposed. They made a law that you can't mandate experimental shots. So that's probably why a lot of them, for one reason, were doing it, because these things were still considered experimental. They were emergency use authorization. And another thing that was very interesting with this is when you go back to when this was being mandated in the military, they were actually they were. I need to. I wish I'd pulled this up, but they were not giving them the shot that was FDA approved, but they were telling them it was. The Comirnaty shot was actually FDA approved, but at least to the best of my knowledge, I've not done any looking into this in at least a couple of weeks, but it has never been at least up until a couple of weeks ago, there's never been a single dose of the FDA approved version that has been administered in the United States. It's all been the Pfizer BioNTech version, which is still under emergency use authorization. And they're also giving the Moderna had theirs approved by the FDA. The Spikevax is what they called it, which who is their marketing person? Jesus. But they got that approved, and they're not giving that either. They're still giving their first Moderna jab that was under the emergency use authorization, which I don't understand, because one, they were talking about removing the emergency use authorization for the monoclonal antibody therapy because there were other treatments available. With the vaccination, they have two approved by the FDA, which the whole board of the FDA, actually they had two boards quit. They refused to approve it, and they replaced them with people that would. That's an interesting little tidbit there. And one at the CDC, it's the same thing back in August. But they did eventually get it approved, and I think it was over the kids that those boards resigned. And one of them actually, the members that were replaced, one of the board members said, "Well, we don't really know, what's going to happen until we start giving it to the kids. So, well, I guess we just have to start giving it." But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I thought that was this story was from the 17th, so or from the 19th. It's just a few days old. And gosh, I don't want to do a real long show tonight, but how do we not mention the 2/22/2022? This show we've delved into a lot of symbolism and a lot of the religion of the elite, as it were. And one of those is it's numerology. Now,
Korean numerology, specifically, there's different ones of them. You've got Hebrew numerology, but a lot of the Illuminati stuff is based on the Pythagorean numerology, which is you take the 0 out and apply them to the numbers 1 through 9.
Oh, and I put my coffee cup upstairs. I thought you guys would surely point out that I had my Masonic symbolism coffee cup. It was actually, it said, "Here's looking at Euclid," and then it had the Pythagorean triangle, the Masonic square with the two triangles on it, and you guys didn't even notice. And the spirals, all that good stuff. But I wish I had that with me tonight, because I'd hold that up to the camera and show them kind of what you were talking about. But the numerology in this case, it also conjuncts, to turn a phrase a little bit there, with the return of Pluto. Do you know anything about this?
I mean, I know about the return of Pluto.
Okay, well,
it specifically goes with the different eras, and really that cycle started back in 2012 with the Dark Rift. You know about that one? When essentially the Dark Rift, fancy way of saying when the galaxy, the Milky Way, it aligns and it looks like a giant eye. That happened years and years ago, and now we're playing out the exact same celestial pattern. What people try to do, though, is they try to apply it to other things that have happened through history. Like they tried to say that since the Queen got COVID on 2/22, that it represented the fall of the British Empire and she was going to die. I'm not saying that patterns don't exist in that sort of way, but if the elites were so planned out that all their numbers meant everything, you could literally just go start sabotaging them. I think they follow their numbers the same way we follow ours. Like, you're going to celebrate Christmas, but like you couldn't use Christmas against someone. There was a business practice. I was listening to an old, I think it was like a 70s business audio thing for some reason, and it recommended that all businessmen who wanted to get involved with China should read the I Ching, which is their book of numbers. So I guess in some sense there are some cultures that use those numbers.
Gosh, I
But
I
sure.
hate when you do stuff like bring up the I Ching, because I wanted to get up into this whole thing with this makes me want to talk about Terence McKenna and how he found this whole thing with the I Ching. But anyway, I don't want to get into that tonight. But
I don't remember stuff well enough to have good conversations on things like that. I remember them enough to say, "Hey, do you know about
right.
this?" But it usually takes, like for example, the Max Headroom thing. As soon as I started, I was like, "I vaguely remember
Mm-hmm.
this." The I Ching is interesting though. It's essentially they say it's like a, I can't remember how many sides it has, but they said it's essentially like a giant dice.
It's a
Like
series of
for
lines, and well,
it's a way for them to figure out to make decisions quicker and
yeah,
better.
they use it for all kinds of different stuff, and we could probably do an episode on that too, because it ties into a lot of stuff, kind of the other stuff that we talk about. But for tonight, what do you make of the 22222 symbolism, or what's the numerology there? What's the two? What do they believe it is? The numerologists.
It would just be straight B's across. But of course, you could take it up to the next one, which I can't do it in my head real quick. They signed letters to it. Like a lot of people for a while were saying Fox was the devil because Fox in numerology is
Oh.
666. You take the zero out, like so you count 1 through 9.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, 7 is G, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you cycle all the way through, 7 ends up being 33 is 7, which is the, you know, saying like after you go, I always wondered why there wasn't 29 letters in the alphabet first, because it starts at 29, or is it 27? I'm having a brain fog. Point is, in the Pythagorean and different kinds of numerology, they take the zero out, and then they can allow those numbers to represent different letters, and then they start coding things. Like, you'll see like, I don't know, let's say CDC would be 343, right? But you can take it up higher too with other numbers. But it never goes above 9. You scale it down. Man, there's some crazy stuff you find. Like there's vortex math. I'm pretty sure that was like Crowley,
Mm-hmm.
where they make symbols. And man, I've seen some crazy stuff where they'd say the pentagram represents the energy flow, and then the reverse is that sort of fan looking position that represents the eights and four, the I guess the evens. There's so much information out there. I have no idea how much of it's just complete bunk and how much of it's just really interesting mathematics and how it works out that way.
Mm. Well,
I wonder if sacred geometry is that. Are we looking at just how the numbers play out? Because I feel like that's just what they did, and when they first discovered it, maybe they put way more emphasis on numbers. Sorry, I got you derailed big time on that one.
no, it's all right. I wanted to see what 2 was in numerology, because and I think it's if the purest representation of duality, basically, is
Okay, well, the 222 would be the one you're looking at,
mhm.
because the 2, when you take it straight across, it represents
Right.
architect. You can go 1 through 9 and look at what they all symbolize. It's gonna change depending on what source you check. But considered universally across, the 2 is considered the point of where you can start master building. Uh, I can't read into it any more than that. I actually think today has a better number than yesterday because it's got the 3 in the center. You take all the zeros out, it's 22, 3, 22. So now you actually do have 2s. It's not a segmented group.
Well, let me tell you. I'll show you a couple little interesting things. So Pluto's return, it happens every 248 years. 248 years ago was 1776, and if I'm not mistaken, it actually began July 4th, 1776, is when Pluto's return was then. So Pluto's return, I'm looking up some astrology here just out of curiosity. These people who do full charts, and they say that we're looking at upheaval in the United States. Well, you don't really have to be, a psychic to say we have upheaval coming in the United States. But I think it's pretty interesting that 248 years ago, the last time Pluto was here, we had a big revolution, overthrew a government, and it's like almost like that cycle is coming again. But it's almost like I feel like the powers that be are aware of this cycle, because this is the kind of stuff that they're into, and they may be trying to get ahead of something. They may actually force their own demise by cracking down too hard to try to prevent revolution. They may cause a revolution. So 248 years ago, 1776, let me show you something interesting here. Let me share my screen. I got the calculator app pulled up here. I'm going to go 2 times 2 times 2. That's February 22nd. We're going to remove the 0, like Tim said, as we do 222, as we do 2022. So we'll remove the 0, and we'll go times 222. And our answer is 1776. Now, how's that for a crazy coincidence?
I guess my question is, because the math is there for a lot of, I guess, what you coincidence, happenstance, whatever. Are there cycles according to the numbers, or are human beings so cyclic that we've noticed the patterns of the stars and we've started to recognize when human beings do certain behaviors according to this giant clock?
Perhaps.
Because I'm wondering if that's just the case, man. I've started looking at some of these videos of them finding old archaeology sites. And I'm not going to come right out and just go full-blown mud flutter just yet, if you've never even heard what those conspiracies are.
Yeah, I've heard them.
But there's a lot of these dates that really just don't line up when you start looking at some of the construction. Like there was a guy, I think he was in the Netherlands, who was showing where they found Portuguese writing in South America, and it was dated from like 600. Like in Portuguese on this tablet, it actually says 600, so that they can read it. It's in the date. And so if the Portuguese got there that early, maybe the one got rubbed off. I don't know, but that's still way before they were supposed to have been there. I think our timeline's fucked. I really do. I don't think people know what the hell happened. I think the history is blown apart, and it just really makes it real confusing. You start looking at stuff that doesn't make sense.
Well,
like, did you know, for example, that we went to Italy a long time ago, and it blew my mind how much of the Vatican is actually just made of red brick. Like, you think the Vatican is just all that marble and stuff that's poured over top of it is on top of, like, the Colosseum is completely made of red brick, and then they poured all this other, like, concrete and marble and whatnot over top of it. Of course, they ended up pulling the marble off to add to the Vatican later on. Some of that stuff just isn't the way they described it in school, which they could just be government education, but it really does make the world more fascinating to start looking at when you start finding some of this crazy stuff out there that we don't know about.
I agree. Well, I have I had a meme here that my buddy made I was going to show, because I do want to go ahead and get into after that quick little aside on the date and the Pluto return. I want to go up to Canada. And I don't know where See, I emailed myself a bunch of stories, because I don't always have time to do my research on my PC, and I will have, to do it on my lunch break and things like that. So I'll send myself, oh, okay, here we go. Oh, so yeah, just all I had to do was scroll up. But let me pull this stuff up real quick. I was going to do like a little meme review here, but I don't think I'll do that now because it's getting kind of late. But I did want to find this one. Here, I'm going to go ahead and play you. Now we're getting kind of late. I don't know what else I want to get into tonight, really. I do want to talk about they did shut down the trucker protests, so let's go ahead and look at this right quick. They're arresting people, they're towing trucks, and Justin Trudeau said that, the Emergency Act does not allow us to call in the military. Let me ask you something, when the fuck is the difference? Look at these guys. They're in fatigues, body armors, they're carrying, I'm not using the misuse of the word as the media often does, they're carrying assault rifles that are actually select fire assault rifles. And so what's it matter if it's the military or the police doing that? What's the difference? But they are busted it up. They revoked the emergency because they did get everything out of the way. So when they were asked, they asked the police chief there in Ottawa, and he said, we're not. They asked him, are you going to continue to pursue charges against people? And they basically said, yeah, we're going to go after these people for years who were involved in this. And some of the things they did, we were talking last month or last week about how this is going to be turned on the liberals who are putting it in place, just like the Patriot Act and all the response to 9/11 was turned on the neocons and there's the supporters of the neocon, the regular Republicans, when they supported this shit, and they got it turned on them. Well, that's that. Now they're looking at this is Jason in charge says, I just got off the phone and this guy's got I don't want to I'm just going to guess his political persuasion based on his green hair and glasses and thin face. Maybe that's but he looks like a kind of one of these radical leftist type people, or at least looks that way. Looks can be deceiving. But he says, I just got off the phone with the bank after I couldn't buy anything on Amazon. Turns out all my cards are frozen because they think I'm one of the truckers. WTF, I voted liberal and I'm boosted. They're saying I have the same name as one of the Nazi truckers. Well,
Man, do you know what they call it? It's called a policy of inaction in government is?
Tell me about it.
They initiate a lot in China. What they'll do is they'll pass a series of very large, like a large amount of laws that are almost impossible to enforce and impossible not to break. And then they just won't enforce any of them. So this atmosphere of just law breaking starts. And then they come in and start cracking heads because now they have a reason to arrest people for reasons that they want to arrest them for another reason.
Yeah.
But they definitely got them for another reason that they never expected them on. It's the same way, like we keep coming back to the January 6th, using laws that people who had Muslim fear helped get passed with the Patriot Act. And now, right now, you've got liberals laughing as they're lining up these truckers into paddy wagons. But watch what happens when the tide turns and we get a lot of laws passed that allow people like this to be drug off the street now. Who loves to protest more than anybody?
Liberals.
It's the left, Antifa, BLM, all these people. Now they're going to get laws passed that they're going to negatively affect their own people, and they're going to be completely bumfuzzled when these people come out marching against them. And it's going to be laws that they supported because it's okay when it's not my side.
That's exactly right.
Well, the U.S. citizen on the head as long as it's not my side, and I'm not okay with that.
And we got to get into the Great Ricochet, the theory that you and I have kind of been developing together. We haven't really talked about that in a while. Before we talked about the podcast, we talked about it several times, and we've really not got into it. I'm sorry?
The Great Ricochet, in that they're trying to force people to go further right.
Yeah.
Is that what because that was what I think's going on.
Yeah, that's what I'm calling your theory of the Great Ricochet that I've been kind of adding on to it. So that's what I'm calling it. Versus the Great Reset, build resistance to the Great Reset in order to create the Great Ricochet. But we'll get into that in another episode. Here's a meme my buddy Aaron of the Armageddon Hour made. Remember when Justin Trudeau took a knee against police brutality, and it shows him kneeling. It looks like with the cops and stuff up there at the Black Lives Matter protests from 2020, and then at the bottom he's taking a selfie of himself while this horse tramples this lady getting ran over on her mobility scooter. I think that's a pretty powerful meme there, and the best ones are simple. They're you look at them and the point's easily taken, and this one is. So let me play this from Chrystia Freeland, because a lot of people probably don't know who Chrystia Freeland is. She's the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. She's supposed to be Trudeau's deputy. Once again, I believe she's the boss lady, at least over Canada. Now, Canada is, she's also the director or a board member of the World Economic Forum. Let me play this video clip of her right quick for you. This is from a few days ago. Now, they have revoked the emergency powers, at least as of today. But I'm going to go ahead and play this anyway because I think it's still important.
In terms of the financial instruments which our government is using right now to act against these illegal blockades and illegal occupation, we reviewed very, very carefully the tools at the disposal of the federal government. And we used all the tools that we had prior to the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and we determined that we needed some additional tools. Now, some of those tools, we will be putting forward measures to put those tools permanently in place. The authorities of FinTrack, I believe, do need to be expanded to cover crowdsourcing platforms and payment platform and their payment providers. So that is something that we need to do, and we will do, and that needs to be in place permanently. Some of these other tools, like the sharing of information between law enforcement and financial services, and the requirement of financial services to be reviewing their accounts proactively, and the immunity from prosecution that we have provided to them in doing this. These are extraordinary measures that we absolutely believe are necessary in the current circumstances, that are having an impact, and let me also point out, having a peaceful impact. And the other aspect of the financial tools that I would point to as being really effective and important is...
Sorry, I just got to pause that. Have a peaceful impact. We will peacefully starve you to death if we don't like what you're doing. I'm sorry, but I had to pause that for a second. We'll peacefully kill you.
Being clear that insurance on trucks that participate in these illegal occupations and blockades will be suspended. So we didn't have those tools. I don't believe that those tools should be part of the toolbox of a government in ordinary times, but they are necessary in these extraordinary circumstances, and they are having a very clear impact.
Don't you love how they call it tools? Like it's it's like a screwdriver or a pair of pliers. No, these are not tools. These are tyrannical measures by any measurement. We're talking right here, and she kind of makes it sound. I don't know. It's almost like you put a woman up there, and it makes it sound more benign, especially when she says it in a soothing voice. But she's basically telling you, if you are involved in any of these protests for not wanting to get have a medication forced on you to be able to live, first of all, if you don't get this medication, if you don't take this medication, we're going to stop your ability to make a living. We're going to cut off your ability to have an income if you're a trucker. So a lot of truckers, I don't know in Canada, but a lot of truckers here they're very intelligent people, but a lot of them have been doing trucking for a long time, and it's not like something they can just learn to code or whatever and jump into a job making the kind of money that you can make driving a truck, especially if you've had your bank account turned off. And that's what they're talking about, is keeping permanently the ability to turn off your bank account if you do something you don't like. And this is, ultimately what it's about. And we've been talking about this since the first episode where we got into the smart polls and TVA. And I think we mentioned a little bit of the social credit score in here. But that's ultimately what this is. This is the social credit system, social credit score going up in Canada. They're supposed to be a liberal, democracy from the West. They come from the Magna Carta, the same lineage as we do down here. There's and Frenchmen, and France is a whole other story. Don't get me started on that. But this is a big deal. This is what they want to do everywhere. So that's why I think it's important to bring this up, because this is, as Klaus Schwab says, they have penetrated the cabinets all over the world. Now, I'm going to have to do a DuckDuckGo search to find this next thing, because I'm sure Google won't pull this up for me. So give me just a second, Tim. What do you think about that clip? Talk to me for a second.
I'm curious, because I know we tend to get, I think an interesting thing that I would like to talk at some point is why I feel like my mindset is so much different than a lot of people that I know, is because I was raised in an end times cult. And so a lot of people have this idea. They let the fear get to them, and that's what the politicians like to do. They want people to think that the end is nigh, so we can get your last minute, save your ass go. And I hate to tell people, but like, the end's probably never going to come. You're probably going to die. You're probably not going to be raptured. There's probably not going to be a great meteor come and save you. Nothing's happening. you're going to have to live with these politicians until you retire, most likely, unless something should happen. And I'm hoping that some of these people start to wake up and realize that. I guess what I'm getting to is these politicians are they're either really stupid to think that they can keep their jobs through a lot of this with that kind of rhetoric, especially, or maybe they're deluded, or maybe they don't plan to keep their jobs. Maybe they've gotten a nice fat payoff from the powers that be, and they only need to be one-term politicians. Or maybe they're radicals and they're idealists and they're willing to go down with the ship. Who knows?
Let me play a video for you right quick. This is a Canadian MP asks how many politicians have sold out to the World Economic Forum.
You know, Mr. Speaker, and to conclude my speech,
sometimes when we talk about Ottawa among friends and family, we make comparisons with other capital or city. And we sometimes describe Ottawa as a quiet, not too lively city. Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question and commentaire, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well.
How does he know the member was in the middle of a really good question if the audio was really bad?
And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay, let's
I guess
try again.
my more question is: as soon as the guy started talking about that stuff, you see the judge's face kind of get this kind of like all.
As soon as he said Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, as soon as he says Klaus Schwab, it's like, oh shit, he's talking about Big Daddy.
Yep. Let's continue.
Well,
the Honourable Member for
right here.
Mr. Speaker,
Do you think I hate to quote I guess pop culture, but I think it's either the second or the third Batman that Chris Nolan did. There's a big speech that they give where they said that when you allow an ecosystem where crime is very common, it'll just spirals and allow more and more crime to become a commonplace until your average citizen is so grimy they can't even tell right from wrong. It just makes you wonder, in politics, that kind of person is already attracted to it, and then they get into that room. Can you imagine what would happen if you already were prone to a certain bad behavior? Let's say smoking. Let's say you want to quit smoking cigs, and
go to work at the cigarette factory.
Well, no, like what if you love smoking cigarettes and you want to quit, but at the same time, you go into a career like, I really want to own pool halls or something where everybody is smoking all the time, and all of a sudden you have no excuses for why you shouldn't behave like a piece of shit. And so you crank up like being okay with nepotism and being okay with behind the scenes trading and that sort of bad behavior. So what happens when you get into just a group of people who just bounce that sort of energy off?
Yeah, who've all got into that situation. Yeah,
it wasn't.
I said who have all come up in that situation.
Yeah, and so you look at these political leaders now look like jokes to you, once you realize that's what they're all just doing.
Well, let me go ahead and finish playing this right quick.
The idiot sitting out there on the green sofa like it's like some 70s Baptist church, and he's sitting up there dressed like an old Meatloaf character. What the hell is that robe he's wearing? Why are they still dressing like that?
The old tradition. They're pilgrims, I guess. I don't know. Here, let's go ahead and finish this real quick.
Dress like that. Yeah, if they're going to dress like that, and I'm supposed to take them seriously? Put your fucking powdered wig on if you're going to dress like that, you clown.
All right, I'm starting it again, Tim. Shut up.
Jim Spey.
Mr. Speaker, that member is promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. We have to call out disinformation.
How did they hear him?
We'll get into debate again. The Honourable Member, questions and comments, the Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Okay, so that's all of that one. But then I want to follow that up right quick. And we're going to go over here to this tweet from Chickengate.
But
here's Klaus himself.
What we are very proud of now, the young generation,
Klaus
like
being the
Prime
goldfish
Minister
off American
Trudeau,
Dad.
President of
I have to sign these people's faces.
what we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France.
So there it is from the horse's mouth. It's not misinformation. It's exactly what the head of the World Economic Forum says. And we, as I said earlier, Chrystia Freeland, she's actually a board member and a director of the World Economic Forum. She's the one that said she's going to make their emergency powers permanent. So that seems pretty contradictory to the idea that it's misinformation that Klaus Schwab has penetrated that cabinet. So I would say that he has. So real quick, got some. I mean, the Ukraine situation is looking worse. We've had a couple of provinces of Ukraine they're the separatists. They have actually called for independence, and Russia has recognized their independence, and Russia is sending what they're calling peacekeeping troops over there into Ukraine, where the people they have decided to secede and they want to be part of Russia. So this is a pretty volatile situation here, to say the least. Gosh, I mean, there's just so much to talk about here.
But how many people, I guess, is it a Rhineland sort of situation? Because I don't remember. You could read in World War II history that when Hitler invaded the Rhineland, if almost everybody, I guess everybody, still in the Rhineland considered themselves Germans, so they welcomed the tanks. There wasn't a battle. And I'm wondering, when they come into Ukraine, wasn't Ukraine part of this? It was part of the Soviet Union. So how many of those people still recognize themselves as Soviets and not just necessarily Ukrainians? I don't know what kind of
there are parts of it where that is the case. Some of them, I think, in the Crimea and South Ossetia, those were folks who believed they were Russians, and there's real contentious history in Russia because apparently Russia used to extend out. I think Kiev was actually where Russia was founded, or in that area of Ukraine, and they expanded so much, but eventually, the people who lived there did form Ukraine, and were, you ask a Ukrainian, or if they were part of Russia, and you probably get a totally different answer depending on what part of Ukraine you were in and who you were talking to. I actually had I was listening to a podcast where a guy called in and was saying that all these Ukrainians were glad to be part of Russia, and then they had an actual Ukrainian first call in and was like, no, buddy, you just guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So it just kind of depends on who you ask. But the situation is getting worse there. I don't understand why we have anything to do with it. Why is
yeah, you do.
I mean, I do. If I put on, my, I guess I'm saying, if I put on my thinking cap, my critical thinking hat, obviously, we can see my personal feelings is that if Russia invades Ukraine and takes over Ukraine, they're going to have a lot of dirt on a lot of American politicians. I think that's what it boils down to. But
who's worried about the invasion of Russia? That's who you need to look at. Like, who's worried about Russia?
In Ukraine, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're American citizens. How many people have any idea of anything about Ukraine beyond maybe movies like Lord of War? If any of that movie is real, that should give you a little bit of insight that they've been using that country as sort of like a hedge fund, like a hedge center to do illegal activity because it's connected to Russia. Russia's evil. Who cares? the same reason they would run weapons, what was it, through Mexico. They would get them somewhere else, but they would run them through Mexico because since they were coming out of Mexico, they looked dirty. They were connected to drug dealers. So they knew people wouldn't be. It's almost like they double taint something. So Biden, you got Burisma, Pelosi. There's always so many dirty hands. Clinton's worried to death that Trump was going to invade Russia. So I have to think that maybe there's something over there they don't want people finding, or maybe they do want Russia to invade Ukraine so they can blow the shit out of it and destroy the evidence.
That's an interesting thought. Well, there was a story from CBS News on Twitter today. Well, I mean, I guess it was everywhere, but I'm trying to pull this up right quick. But it was basically blaming Ukraine for our I'm not even going to pull up the story. I'm just going to give you the gist of it. It was blaming Ukraine. It was saying that the crisis in Ukraine is the reason that inflation is going through the roof, that prices are going up, that energy costs are up, all these different things that basically the Biden administration has directly caused with their action. I mean, you saw prices go up immediately when he came in first thing and shut down that oil pipeline. Like whether or not you like fossil fuels and oil, or whether or not you think we ought to have, a green economy, it's common sense that when you have a country whose lifeblood is basically oil, and then you shut down a pipeline that everybody's betting on is going to make the prices go lower, I mean, your prices are going to go back up. And immediately after he shut that pipeline down, they did. So to blame Ukraine for that or to blame the situation in Ukraine for that is just, I don't even know how they get there. They got ratio to hell and back on Twitter. I'm not sure if you know what a ratio is, but that's when you get more comments blasting you than you get likes, because generally people just like something to move on. If you take the time to comment and blast.
The old school way was to thumbs down it. That was the ratio. YouTube decided they were going to get rid of that. They did that for political reasons. Like they took away the dislike button around the exact same time of Biden campaign. Same way, like people think that's not true. You can go look at the history of The Onion. The Onion was one of the number one satirical publications out there, and they made fun of Hillary Clinton so much that a group of Hillary Clinton supporters piled their money together and bought the paper to make them quit doing it.
Got breaking news here. We got explosions in Ukraine, which CBS is reporting is likely the beginning of a full-scale Russian invasion. Now, I don't know why hearing explosions would lead you to believe that, considering there's been shells and proxy wars and stuff going on there for years. So this seems like the media is really trying to push this stuff right now. And actually we have a President Biden condemned Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack, quote unquote, on Ukraine late Wednesday evening in a statement saying the world will hold them accountable. President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of human life and human suffering. Russia alone is responsible for the death and destruction of this attack will bring. This is pretty bad news, guys.
What if it's like Grenada, though?
I don't know. How do you mean?
I know that's like I think maybe people get confused whenever I toss in the other part, but like if you're going doom and gloom, I try to go silver lining, and if you're the other way, I try to go the other way. But like that's so far away. Like we don't understand what's going on.
No, but what I'm saying is they
blowing each other up. Probably do it for more than reasons that we think.
Well, the main thing I'm saying is that I think it's bad news is they're always wanting American boots on the ground somewhere, and we just got them out of Afghanistan, and there was that thought that, well, the fact that we're getting out of Afghanistan means we're going somewhere else. That doesn't mean the war's over. It just means we're going somewhere else, huh?
Yeah, but it also means that it's no longer needed to secure that. A lot of that Middle Eastern occupation is due to those poppy fields where they make opium for the for the morphine and stuff that we use in groves over here.
Absolutely.
Got to guard that. Well, I mean, I guess you just really need to look at Ukraine. Like, you really think they'd send U.S. troops to Ukraine?
Well, I don't know, but this is the reason I say it's bad news is because I'm looking here across Twitter at the news, and it's like all these corporate press outlets are pushing that their full-scale invasion underway because there's explosions reported. Again, as we said, there's been explosions going on for a long time, but what I'm pointing out is the media is all saying I mean, it doesn't matter if you're looking New York Times, you're looking here, AP, NBC, ABC. They're all almost the same wording. Putin has launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Peaceful Ukrainian citizens are under attack. This is a war of aggression. It's all what other fucking kind of war is there? But it says Ukrainian military command centers in Kiev and Kharkiv are being attacked by missile strikes. Reuters witnesses in Kiev heard series of explosions shortly after Russia announced military operation in Ukraine. Now Russia did roll in. They did roll in with their quote-unquote peacekeeping forces, and as we've seen with the UN peacekeeping forces, that's just Orwellian speak for we're going to go in and fuck some shit up. So we'll see what happens, man. I'm not going to stay on here and watch the situation all night. It's 20 till, but if you're watching this, who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think that's definitely just whether there is an invasion or not. Just the fact that you have all the news all saying this, like, it seems like they're really pushing for a response, which I'm sure.
Well, it seems to me like they're really. I don't know, maybe it sounds cold. I don't know, but like there's other people shooting each other right now, and we're not talking.
That's what I'm saying, man. They're focusing on this. The reason that they're focusing on this is because they want some sort of American action on it. That's the only thing I can figure about it.
Right, I think it was when Trump and Biden were running against each other. They brought up several times on a couple of different news organizations that China and India had some firefights on the border. Well,
that's regular.
And everybody's like, oh my God, India and China are going to war. And then if you look at the history, it turns out they shoot at each other about every couple 6 months or so. Like they apparently have been doing this for a long time around each other's borders. So they test each other. And I'm not saying there's not a full-fledged invasion of Ukraine.
Well,
I'm saying why the number one news for American people? Why are they trying to distract you?
Well, that's what I'm wondering is it a distraction, or is it to prompt calls for military action? I don't, because they've really been building it up from not from. I mean, obviously the right's not going to. I mean, I don't know regular people who are going to pull for this either way.
I have nothing to pull for.
That's what I mean. Who's going to pull for an invasion to protect Ukraine as far as regular people? But what I feel like is the news is trying to turn people onto that side to get that support, which would be
protect Ukraine. That's what they're. You think that's what they're trying to do? We need to protect Ukraine.
Yeah, that's what I feel like they're pushing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're
we saw Trudeau just the other day. He got up and they had this big thing where everybody stood up against and said they're not going to stand for Russia to do something like this. It's almost like they want to, there seems to be like a united front against Russia here, and it was funny because Canada was announcing that they were going to put sanctions on Russia, and that this kind of stuff this authoritarianism and stuff was unacceptable while they were doing this clearing out this blockade with the Emergencies Act. But geez, yeah, well, what I intended to show was that basically that said that CBS News was killed about figuratively with words. I mean on Twitter for blaming the cause of the inflation, the cause of the price rise, the cause all this good stuff was because of Ukraine. And here's a meme. And then I told them we had to pay higher gas prices to defend democracy, and it shows all the lizard people laughing, drinking out of their golden chalices. So yeah, I don't really know how much I had more I wanted to get into, but it's 20 till midnight already, so we'll probably show you a couple more here and then call it a night. Here's a meme from Sal the Agorist. Peter Griffin here. Russia invades another country and America says only we get to do that.
I guess I guess we can have some more Russia events by the time Sunday rolls around. I've got a bunch of topics that are probably just going to roll into that one thing that I keep coming back to. I keep coming back to that flood, so I'm glad we're going to finally get to hit
Yes,
that
you've mentioned
Band-Aid.
that the last 2 weeks. Sorry, Tim, but there's just so much shit going
So
on. But
it's funny how stuff keeps piling up because I keep finding new stuff. But I think the Butler and TVA thing will be an interesting one. There's interest in in the way the towns and stuff were flooded
yeah,
online. People are interested in that, and I've not heard a lot of places mention Butler. Actually, I've not heard anybody mention Butler except for some like historian sites. No alternative histories
well, we're gonna.
pages.
Yeah, and like we're talking. So this coming Sunday, we're gonna dig into the biblical flood. If you'll want to join us for that, I think it'll be really interesting. Not just the biblical flood, the worldwide flood story. It's in all kinds of different mythologies and histories. So there's lots of evidence that we found in our days for it. So that's something that Tim and I have been talking about getting into for quite a while. And we're also going to look at, if you're not in our area, we were actually the TVA flooded several towns, and well, at least one town right here locally. But they built a series of hydroelectric dams all over the South, and in some cases they did flood set towns. So we're going to get into that on the episode for our live angle. And Tim, you were talking about some of the different stuff. I brought some of my books here. We're going to look into marijuana a little bit, supercharged. That's the cannabis industry. It's really piling up around here. We've got the hemp farms in here. We've got laws in the state assembly looking at legalization. We've got legalization. Sales start, I think, in June in Virginia. The Juan Pardo expeditions. Now this was over the mountain in North Carolina. Juan Pardo and first DeSoto, and then Juan Pardo came up through from Florida, and the word was that they were in search of mining different metals and to try to categorize what different metals and all this stuff were up here. B and I have a theory that they actually took the gold and brought it up here to hide it, that they found when they sacked Montezuma there. Anarchist Handbook by Michael Malice. So we're going to look at the idea of a stateless society. It's not anarchy. It's not all black-clad kids out firebombing trash cans and stuff. There's a lot of different kinds of it. One of which is just voluntary society, and that has a number of essays from different anarchist thinkers about how useless the state is in a lot of cases, and also how harmful it can be. We got Daniel Boone. We got local. A lot of local activity with Daniel Boone. Boone's Creek up in North Johnson City, named after him. We got organized crime, and we're going to look at Al Capone in Johnson City coming up. And then I just found this really cool book at the Salvation Army the other day for like 50 cents. I had to buy it, and it's on classical mythology, and some of the pictures in this thing, folks, are just gorgeous. But we're going to do a little bit of a episode on that too, and it kind of goes into a lot of the stuff that we do anyway. So that's what I'm reading now. I kind of jump around, when I'm doing research and nonfiction. Go from one thing to another, whereas I'm reading Jurassic Park finally, that my sister-in-law gave me like 2 years ago. I read half of it and then put it down, and then never finished it, so I'm picking that back up for my fiction. But I like to bounce around a little bit with some with my nonfiction, and keep me from getting, it can get a little dry even if you're interested in the subject matter. So that's what I'm looking at right now, and if you're interested in looking into some of those things for the upcoming shows, that kind of gives you an idea where my head's at for some of those. But Tim, anything else to add for tonight? I don't really have any. My Ukraine story is kind of moot now, with what I see the media doing. So it's developing so much that there's no point for me to look at the Ukraine thing the way that I was going to do, because it's all up in the air right now. So we'll probably have to revisit that a bit. Probably next week. We'll do that on the Wednesday show. Anything else to add? Oh. How did that happen? Sorry.
I think you moved it off so they could do the book. Cause
oh, yeah, I went to the wrong camera too. Okay, my bad. I'm glad you caught that, though.
Well, no, that's why I keep the monitor over here. No, I don't have really anything to add. Um, oh, I did have an analogy that I think it would put some people in perspective because I've had people say the phrase something similar to this that do you really think people plan that far in advance? Something to that extent. And I guess the example I would like to use is I got curious quite a while back about why North and South Ireland are separate. When you go to Ireland, you have Ireland at the very tip top. You have North Ireland, which is still part of the United Kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always wondered, like, why. So it turns out that something to that way long time ago, you have to look up the king's name and that sort of look up the king's name. I can't remember what year it was.
Okay.
He wanted to take Ireland from Britain, but he knew he couldn't take Ireland because he couldn't get enough support. So what he decided he would do is he would take it for his great great grandson. And so what he did was he owned a lot of land at the top of Ireland. And I could be butchering this. You can look this up, abbreviating. And he gave all that land to Catholic nobles that were Irish descent. And they took that land and established the top part of it because where they were Irish, people wouldn't want to fight them because they were their own thing. But where they were Protestant, it allowed him to have some sway because his plan was if we move Catholics in North Ireland, eventually, just through the natural, reproductive cycles and culture and social and the way it is, he was hoping that the Catholicism would spread down to the south. That way, his great 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 grandson or something could come and take Ireland later on when they had more Catholic support.
Mm-hmm.
And if people honestly don't, because we're commoners, dude.
Yeah.
We sit around and fuck around with Xboxes and Chevy Cavaliers and drink beer and stuff. Meanwhile, you've got these assholes with crowns on who literally think, Ma, you know what? I bet that'd make a nice island for my great 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 grandson. And they will literally plant seeds hoping this shit pans out for them. So if people don't think that the world is fucked up because people do weird, nefarious plans that last for decades, you're naive.
That's the history of the world.
It's in the history books that people have tried to own this ball forever. And if you do, unless you think that history's a lie too, that people are con artists, but they're still doing it, is my point.
The history of this world is a history of conspiracies. That's what everything that you hear that happened is, almost all of it came from some conspiracy or another. That's how we ended up in these events. So the idea that you or I coming up with a theory about how we think some conspiracy may be unfolding means it's automatically, that we're full of crap because we're theorizing about this and we don't have proof of it. If you won't have proof unless you have a theory that this is happening and look for the proof.
Yeah, I guess that's just my whole point of I know we'll just say 50-50. How's that? Because I don't have an ego about whether I win an argument. I would rather be right. I would rather my brain be thinking correctly so I make the right decision rather than be correct about something I think I'm correct about. I want to know when I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
And let's just say we're wrong 50% of the times when we have these conversations. Let's just say for no reason. We're wrong half the time. You're still speculating, right? And I just really think it's bizarre that there are a lot of people out there, most people out there think that there's not people planning. They think that that people don't want to at some point make an entire country be a different religion. They don't think that that Russia went through and genocided a group of people called the Lians Cossack. They don't want to know that China is genociding the Uyghur Muslims. We want to know that stuff like that because that doesn't happen. And yet you can read in your history books where a king tried to gift his great-great-grandson an entire country by giving land to other people. So it's just crazy if people don't think that kind of thing doesn't happen still today. That's my soapbox.
That's a good way to cap it off, man. I'm right there with you, and I think that, I think you summed it up pretty well, pretty concisely there. So I think we'll go ahead and call that a night. I want to thank you for joining us. Hopefully, if you didn't see last Sunday's episode from the 20th, we had a really good time. We did some shooting at the range, so go back and look at that. If you and I'm sorry, I'll get that damn range video up the rest of tonight for our viewers that went with us and those that wanted to see that. I'm sorry, I had it on my PC today, and I haven't got a chance to do all the editing, but I did get all the stuff on there. But I'm going to get it together. It's a ton of clips, and I'm having to cut some up, and You know, I want to take people out, the people that weren't there with us. I want to take them out, you know, not have them in the video because I didn't ask, you know, if I could put them on my video or anything. So,
Go. Did you see? You know what these Facebook bots are? Where essentially a Facebook bot will rogue something and then make up a completely fake persona, and it's just to get clicks, right? I saw Moose on Facebook today. He was really confused because apparently some guy was using like one of his albums, and like him and a couple of his friends were looking at this page and they are super confused, and they thought the guy. I really think it's probably a bot because I found my picture on like a cluster of like it's like a cluster of pictures like for like a musician I had a long time ago that I wasn't associated with, and I think his music got swapped by a bot, but I think that's really funny. So.
That is funny. Well, I'll talk to him about that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and hop off here for now, and we'll see you guys Sunday night at 10 o'clock as always. Please like the video. If you enjoyed the content and stuck with us this long, we'd really appreciate it. It helps other people find it. It makes it more likely to show up in their news feed. So we'd appreciate it if you did that. And we'll see you Sunday at 10 o'clock. Don't forget to turn on your notifications so you can join us live and jump in the chat, call in on the Skype, call in on the Discord, however we want to do it. So I'll see you then, where we talk about the flood and the flood. Later.